So here's what I'm calling today is the 21 dramatic lessons in problem solving from Indiana Jones in the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So in the movie, Indiana Jones is an American archaeologist back in the 1930s, and he's able to do amazing things. He's able to problem solve, to get rare antiquities, overcome all sorts of obstacles, and beat out his competitors to be the first to get these rare pieces. And the question I've got here is how? How is he able to do this? How is he able to accomplish all these seemingly amazing feats, solve all these problems, overcome all these seemingly impossible obstacles? Any ideas for this? Especially people who've seen it. What, or even just you haven't seen it, but you have any guesses as to what might be some of the secrets? Take a minute, just discuss it with the people next to you, and then I'll see if you guys come up with anything. So we've got I said there's 21 dramatic lessons in problem solving from Indiana Jones. The first one I've got here is don't be misled by a nervous head. So first of all, Indiana Jones is in the jungle in South America. One of Indiana Jones' approving guides come across a frightening statue in the jungle. The guide automatically reacts with fear and runs away. In contrast, Indiana takes a moment to consciously consider the situation and consult with his map before making the judgment that it's safe to keep moving on. So the question is, what's this illustrating? What approach did the guide rely upon, but not Indiana? What caused the guide to, out of fear, run off when he really shouldn't have? So that's the question. Here's my little short 20-second clip of this. Click on this, maybe it should work. So the guide runs off, but Indiana Jones doesn't. What is that illustrating? Yeah, that he's basing his decision on his gut kind of feelings, that automatic emotional reaction, whereas Indiana Jones doesn't go on kind of non-conscious gut feelings. Instead, he consciously deliberates, thinks about what to do before acting on it. Good. Okay, and just tell me if you guys have questions as I go along this. The next lesson we have, this one I call think about what's probable more than what's memorable. So they continue through the jungle and they come across an arrow freshly tipped with poison. And that immediately brings to mind the threat of the local Javitos tribe, which causes one of the guides to overestimate the likelihood of them being followed by that tribe. But the other guide reasons that if the Javitos knew that they were there, they would already be dead. So the question I've got here is, what caused the first guide to make this overestimation, but not the second guide? What did the first guide fall prey to? And again, here's a little clip of this.
Conflictos are near. Poison is still fresh, 3 days. They're following us.
If they knew we were here, they would have killed us already.
Yeah, availability heuristic. So this is again, it's a heuristic, it's a shortcut. This kind of time you're coming up with your decisions based on what's most available in your mind, what comes to mind readily from memory. And so when he sees the poison tip, that immediately reminds him of the Javitos tribe, and so he uses that availability from memory to guide his guess of how likely it is they're being followed. The other one says no. The other one kind of reasons through it that even though the Javitos tribe comes right to mind as soon as you see poison-tipped arrows, that it's not likely that they're tracking them, because then they'd already have killed them. Okay, moving right along. The next lesson we have here is lesson 3, practice until later it becomes second nature. So here I told you that when they get to a river, Indiana Jones is looking at the river, and then behind his back, one of the other guides pulls out a gun intending to shoot him and steal his treasure map. But based on his past experience, when Indiana hears the click of a gun, he immediately recognizes the dangerous situation he's in, and he reacts reflexively with his whip to knock the gun out of the guide's hand. The guide, not as well practiced in making quick defensive decisions, is stunned and then runs away. And so the question I've got here is, what did Indiana rely upon here that the guide lacked? So what was it that helped Indiana in this situation? Here's my little 20-second clip of this. Intuition it is, yeah, intuition. Yeah, again, so it's kind of the positive side. So we talked about intuition having a negative side before when you kind of use automatic gut feelings, how that can lead you astray. Like when the first guide ran off out of fear, didn't actually sit and think about the situation first. Whereas here, Indiana Jones is using his kind of quick decision making to his advantage. And that can happen with practice as you become an expert in something that you can size something up and instantly that you don't have to do the slow kind of conscious thinking to try to come up with an answer, and that saved his life in this situation. Okay, continuing on with our story, we're now to lesson 4. This one is always test what you've guessed. So now Indiana, with his one remaining guide, enters into the temple. And when Indiana was the last remaining guide, reached the location of the golden idol inside the temple, the guide assumes that it's safe for them to proceed to it, even though this belief goes beyond the evidence they've seen so far, which really, you shouldn't be assuming it's safe kind of thing. All these kind of threats they've seen so far, the guide says it's fine. Indiana Jones is not so certain, and he decides to test this belief by trying to set off booby traps, instead of just looking for evidence that would only support the belief that it's safe to go and approach the idol. So there's 2 concepts I'm going for here with this example. First of all, one, what errant thinking did the guide make that made him think it was safe to go ahead when it really isn't? So what would you call that errant thinking? And then what was the errant thinking that Indiana Jones avoided by when he went to test this belief? He tried to test in a way that could prove it wrong. He didn't just look for evidence that could support the idea that it's safe. Instead, he thought of, well, actually test and see if there is booby traps to see if it's not safe. So looking for the names of these 2 concepts, and here's the little video clip showing this.
Let us hurry. There is nothing to fear here.
That's what scares me.
Overconfidence for that's right. And then what about the other one? So by Indiana Jones, the way he tests that belief, that he tried to think of how to disprove it instead of only looking for stuff that could support it. What error did he avoid by doing that? Confirmation bias, that's right, yeah, good. Those are those 2 other concepts where thinking can go wrong. Good, okay, I continue on, unless, just again, stop me if you have questions anytime. Next, so we've got lesson 5, to help devise visual eyes. So he finally gets to the idol, and as I said before, he thinks it might be booby trapped. So he needs to put some kind of replacement weight that weighs the same amount before he can take away the idol kind of thing, so he can set off some kind of trap. To do this, Indiana imagines what the weight of the idol must be in order to create a balance that he thinks will approximate the weight of the idol, and thus avoid setting off another booby trap. So the question is, what is Indiana Jones taking advantage of here? What concept we have is he taking advantage to be able to solve this problem? Here he is imagining what the weight of the idol must be like. So let me go to this. that visualizing, thinking about, and this can also be a kind of weight imagine too, these kind of tactile sensory aspects of how much does it weigh, or what does it look like, what does it sound like, all those kind of imagination kind of aspects to solve some problem. So it's not using words per se to be able to deductively solve some kind of problem. Instead, you visualize, you imagine the scenario to be able to help come up with a solution. Good. Moving on. So the next lesson we have here is lesson number 6. Be careful about communication being used for manipulation. So as I told you, although Indiana set off that booby trap, a large boulder comes chasing him. He manages to escape from the temple, but he escapes only to have the idol taken away. So Indiana narrowly escapes the temple of the idol, only to find himself handing over to his rival archaeologist Belloc. And Belloc makes sounds in order to convey information that manipulates the minds of Vito's people. And specifically, while holding the idol high for all the Vitos to see, Belloc calls out the name of their god, causing them to prostrate themselves to the ground, so lie down to the ground. When Indiana uses this distraction to escape, Belloc then commands the Vito's people to kill Indiana by making a wish-wish sound, where the order of the wish-wish doesn't matter kind of thing. It's just the same word repeated twice. So there's 2 questions to this. One, what is Belloc using to control the Vitos? So those sounds he's making in order to convey information, what's the concept name we have for that? What do we call that? Using sounds to convey information to other people. And then secondly, what stage of development does Belloc show for this? So the fact that he's using one word to describe their god and one word kind of commands, and the order doesn't matter. What's the name of that stage of language development that he's illustrating here? And here's my clip of this.
You could wonder if only you spoke Vitos.
So what do we call those sounds that convey information? What is Belloc using to manipulate the Vitos people?
Language?
Language it is, yeah, language. And then what stage of language development is Belloc showing for this?
At the end, it's the one stage, one word stage.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, one word stage. He's saying the name of the god, and then he's using just simple one word kind of commands, and the order doesn't matter in which he gives them, the wish-wish kind of thing. Good. Excellent. Continuing on here, now we're on to lesson 7 of 21. This one is to, now he's gone back to the college, and here it says to gain expertise, learn its terminology. So he's teaching the students, kind of like us here. He's teaching them the names of concepts in his field of archaeology. One of the terms that he's teaching the students is Neolithic. So he sounds out the word, the first part of the word neo, including the n sound in neo. And he also explains that first part of the word neo, part of Neolithic means new. And then he sounds out the second part of Neolithic, the lithic part, explains its meaning as well. It means stone. And he writes this on the board, and as he's writing out the spelling on the board, he has to stop for a second and think about how to spell it properly. He's thinking about the rules in English for spelling for this. So this kind of illustrates the 3 major parts of a language. What are they? So him making the n sound in neo, what do we call that? What's that smallest unit of sound in the language? What's that term? And then the meaning of the prefix neo. So what do we call that? What do we call that smallest unit of meaning that neo is an example of? And then finally, the rules of language, like how to spell the word when he's writing on the chalkboard. What concept name is that an example of? So here's my little clip of him teaching in college.
Neo, meaning new, and lithic, I-T-H-I-C, meaning stone.
Okay. What do you guys think? So first of all, the n sound in neo, that's example of what? What do we call that smallest unit of sound in language?
Is it a
Phoneme, that's right. Yeah, phoneme, that's the kind of smallest units of sound. They can be single letters, or they can be like combined letters like CH, the ch sound is a single small unit of sound. You can combine those to make more meaningful units. What do we call the smallest units of meaning, which can be whole words, or it can also be prefixes and affixes and stuff like that. So the neo is an example of what? What's that small unit of meaning called? Morpheme, that's right. And then the rules to combine all these sounds and words and stuff like that for any given language is called what? Grammar, that's right. And so all three of those are the major components needed to make something a language. Good. Moving on. Now we're on to lesson 8 for the best ways to find, keep an open mind. So here, still in the classroom, Indiana explains a story about a burial site to his students. So while discussing burial site, Indiana mentions how one of the great dangers of archaeology is folklore. In particular, in an example, he describes how traditional beliefs held there was a golden coffin buried at the site, which falsely led treasure hunters to dig up holes all over the site instead of looking inside one of the chamber areas, which turns out to be where the actual grave goods were hidden the whole time. So the question I've got here is, what can the treasure hunters being misled by their prior expectations be considered example? What concept do we have that basically is describing? Your beliefs, your prior expectations influencing your decisions, which can lead you awry, as was in this case.
Use that with robbing, in which case we mean the removal of the contents of the barrel. This site also demonstrates one of the great dangers of archaeology, not the life and limb, although that does sometimes take place. Now I'm talking about folklore. In this case, local tradition held that there was a golden coffin buried at the site. And this accounts for the holes dug all over the barrow and the generally poor condition of the find. However, chamber 3 was undisturbed, and the undisturbed chamber and the grave goods that were found in another
Okay. Mental set, that's right. Yeah, those traditional beliefs made them kind of set in their ways for what they thought was the solution, the way to try to solve the problem. Whereas Indiana Jones is telling them, try to avoid that. Don't be set in your ways. Be open to other possible solutions, other ways to find the goods, the treasure, so to speak. Good. Next, we've got the suits arrive. The Army intelligence officers want to talk to Indiana. So Army intelligence officers visit Indiana in his college and describe how they've heard he's a man of many talents. In particular, they list Indiana's following talents: his ability to communicate ideas as a professor of archaeology, his expert knowledge of the occult, and his problem-solving skills to obtain rare antiquities. And the question I've got here is, what are all these talents which Indiana possesses parts of? What single concept name do we have that captures all these many different talents? The ability to express ideas, to hold knowledge, to be able to solve problems. All those are examples of what? And here it is, the intelligence officers praising Indiana for all these things.
Dr. Jones, we've heard a great deal about you. Have you? Professor of archaeology, expert on the occult, and I just want to say it, obtainer of rare antiquities.
Wait a second, why don't you sit down to be more comfortable?
Thank you. Yes, you're a man of many talents. Now you step.
Cognition, that's right, yeah, they're all examples of cognition. All those kind of mental processes of taking information in, processing it, thinking about it, storing it, memory, also be able to get it out and communicate it to others, which is language. All those fall in this large kind of general category of cognition. Okay, next we're on to lesson 10. This one says, precisely define what you have in mind. So the intelligence officers read an intercepted Nazi communique that describes a number of words that they don't understand the meaning of. And they ask India about these, things like the word tannis and staffordra and such, and what the Ark is referring to. However, after India explains the meaning of those words, the officers are able to better conceptualize what the Nazis are up to. So here I'm looking for two concepts. The first one is the name of the brain area that the officers are using to learn the meaning of those words. So what area of your brain is responsible for understanding the meaning of words? It's kind of your mental dictionary in your brain. And the second concept I'm looking for is the name of a theory that we have this week that explains how understanding those words can help the intelligence officers better understand the situation, what the Nazis are up to. So what are those two concepts here? Here's the clip where they're learning the meaning of these words to better understand the situation.
outside of Cairo. We've got some information here, but we can't make anything out of it, and maybe you can. Tanis development proceeding. Acquire headpiece. Staff of Ra. Abner Ravenwood University.
Nazis have discovered Tanis.
So what does that mean to you, Tanis?
Well, the city of Tanis is one of the possible resting places of the Lost Ark.
The Lost Ark.
Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant, the chest the Hebrews used to carry around the Ten Commandments.
What do you mean commandments? You're talking about the Ten Commandments?
Yes, the actual Ten Commandments, the original stone tablets that Moses brought down on Mount Horeb and smashed, if you believe in that sort of thing. You guys ever go to Sunday school?
Well,
Okay.
Wernicke's?
Wernicke's area, yeah, named after a German neuropsychologist, Wernicke. And then what's the theory that says that you have to have the proper words in order to be able to understand something?
Linguistic determinism?
Linguistic determinism, that's right. Yeah, good. And then moving on, and again, just stop me if you guys have questions. So now we're on to lesson 11. This one says, to be more effective, think from different perspectives. So when Professor Abner Ravenwood, Indiana's previous doctoral supervisor, when he's spoken of prominently in a secret Nazi cable, the intelligence officers interpret this as meaning that Ravenwood is a Nazi spy. And that leads them to judge Ravenwood is a problem for them, and he needs to be stopped. However, Indiana's colleague says that's just rubbish, that judgment is false, and that the cable can instead be interpreted as meaning that the Nazis are interested in Ravenwood because he has the headpiece, the Staff of Ra, which is essential for getting the Lost Ark, which is what the Nazis are really after here. So the question here is, what's the way of interpreting that differs between them? You know, that the officers are interpreting the Nazi cable as meaning that Ravenwood is a spy and therefore judging to be a problem. Indiana's colleague says, no, you're misinterpreting it, you're reading all wrong. That really the reason why he's mentioned so much this cable is because he has this headpiece, the Staff of Ra kind of thing. So that difference in how they're interpreting the cable that leads to differences in their judgments of Ravenwood, what's the name for that? And here's a little clip where this is happening.
We're from the city.
frankly, we're somewhat suspicious of Mr. Ravenwood, American being mentioned so prominently in a secret Nazi cable.
Oh, rubbish. Ravenwood's no Nazi.
Well, what did the Nazis want him for then?
Well, obviously, the Nazis are looking for the headpiece to the Staff of Ra, and they think Abner's got it.
What exactly is a headpiece?
He goes on.
Framing.
Framing, you guys all agree with that? And that's true, yeah. So framing, basically how you're interpreting the situation. If same situation is phrased differently, it doesn't change the facts, but just it emphasizes certain things more than others, then that can totally influence your judgment to make you do incorrect decisions. Which is what was illustrated here, the intelligence officers were making the wrong judgment because their false way of framing the Nazi cable. Okay, so now Indiana is on to try to get that headpiece, the Staff of Ra, from Ravenwood. He flies to Nepal to try to get it from Ravenwood's daughter, Marion, who he used to have an affair with. And there he discovers that Marion is being tortured by the Nazis. That in order to have Ravenwood's daughter, Marion, tell him the whereabouts of the Staff of Ra headpiece, the Nazis threaten her with a white-hot poker. However, due to her fear, she struggles to speak, getting words. She says, wait, I can be reasonable, wait, I'll tell you everything. And so the question here is now we're looking for the other major language area of the brain. This one not for storing the meaning of words, but this one for helping you to express your words, to be able to get them out. And if it's damaged, then like Marion, you have a hard time speaking fluently. You speak kind of brokenly, if I can pun broke his area, a bit broken speech. It's not fluent. So here she is having a hard time getting the words out.
Wait, I can be reasonable.
That time is past.
You don't need that. Wait. I'll tell you everything.
Yes, I know you will.
Let her go.
Broca's area, that's right, yeah, named after another neuropsychologist, a French one, Paul Broca, who first discovered this, and was one of the most famous kind of first neuropsychology cases that argued that different areas of the cortex are specialized for different functions. In this case, it was the first language areas discovered, that he had a patient named Tan that due to damage from, I believe, a stroke in that area, the frontal lobe, that couldn't say anything except the word tan. That's hence they called him Tan in the report kind of thing. When he passed away, broke an autopsy and found that he had damage to this area in the frontal lobe that is now named, broke his area. It's known to be responsible for language production. And yeah, even if you have it intact, if you're in scary situations, you have a hard time getting it to work properly, to speak fluently. Or eloquently, as I've got up there in the top lesson there. I'm not sure if I said that. When danger is imminent, don't try to be eloquent. No. Okay, continuing on, now we're on to lesson 13. So now he rescues Marion, they fly to Cairo, a large city in Egypt, so they can start trying to track down the location of the Ark. And the lesson I've got here is, as learning gains, plasticity wanes. So as after Indiana rescues Marion, they take the staff of Ra headpiece with them in search of the Ark in Cairo, where Marion treats a very smart monkey as her baby. In addition to making all sorts of sounds, noises unrelated to English language, the monkey can also hear and imitate unknown foreign languages, like German sounds, is able to imitate those. So the question I've got here is, what stage of language development, assuming if the monkey was like a baby, what stage of language development is he showing in this? So here's the clip of the monkey, very smart monkey, imitating all sorts of sounds.
Do we need the monkey? Huh?
I'm surprised at you, Jones, talking that way about our baby. You've got your looks, too.
And your brain.
I noticed that. She's a smart little bit. Smart. Ah! Hey! Where are you going?
She'll be all right. Have a date. Come on. Come on. Marion.
Hey, what's this?
It's a date. You eat them.
Yeah. Right then.
Okay. Babbling stage, yeah. It's making all sorts of noises, not just the familiar language, can imitate all and hear all sorts of other languages, whereas as we get older, as the lesson kind of hints at, as we get more skilled in language, our plasticity, our ability to develop accents and hear different accents, we lose that over time kind of thing. It's the price of expertise. You get really good at one thing, but it loses your flexibility to pick up other languages as well. Whereas early on development, within the first year, before 1 year of age, then we are able to hear all sorts of kind of phonemes that are outside our own native language and imitate them. Okay, with all that babbling. Moving on, now we're on, so Marion gets kidnapped because the monkey's owner told the Nazis about Indiana and Marion. Marion gets kidnapped in a basket. Indiana goes racing after to try to rescue her. He attempts to rescue her, but he's blocked by a skilled swordsman. To save time, because he's rushing to try to get Marion before she's taken away, instead of fighting the swordsman in a prolonged hand-to-hand combat, instead Indiana takes a shortcut of simply shooting him with a gun. And the question is, what strategy is Indiana using to solve this problem? Illustrated here, so here's that clip. Heuristic, that's right. Yeah, heuristic is that kind of shortcut approach to be able to solve something. So it actually comes from the same etymology as eureka kind of thing, that heuristic. It's this kind of way of summing something up, an idea kind of thing, to simplify some kind of really complex problem, just break down something simple to be able to solve it. It doesn't always mean it's going to work, but if it works most of the time, then it can save you a lot of time. In contrast to the other strategy that's illustrated in this next lesson, so here it says, lesson 15, to have what's lost returned, leave no stone unturned. So now he's back to tracking down where Marion is. She's being carried away in a basket. He finally catches up to her in the marketplace, but there's hundreds of baskets that all look the same. He can't figure out which basket she's in out of the many possible ones there. So what does he do? He searches for Marion by systematically looking over each and every basket, since that way he's eventually sure to find her. So what strategy is this illustrating? It's not a time-saving one, but you'll be more certain of always getting an answer if you go through this kind of step-by-step process. What do we call it? And here's the video clip of Indiana illustrating it, I think, if I can get this to work. Algorithm, you guys all agree with that? And it is, yeah. He's using a more algorithmic approach, very formulaic, a step-by-step, systematic process. It's usually slower, but you're more guaranteed to get the correct results as opposed to trying to take some kind of heuristic shortcut to solve the problem. And for computers that run on algorithms are so fast for processing, so usually time isn't an issue for them, whereas for us humans, to go through a step-by-step process where there's many, many different possible answers would take very long. Okay, moving on. So the next lesson is flocking together doesn't make birds of a feather. So Indiana Jones, he's in despair, thinks that Marion has been killed, that the basket got destroyed in a car accident. So he goes to the bar, starts drinking, where he runs into his old rival Belloc. And Belloc judges that Indiana is the same as him based on how closely their work shares characteristic of a typical adventurous archaeologist, despite some apparent differences like in their ethics. That Indy has ethics and Belloc has lost any that he ever had any to begin with. The question I've got down here is what is Belloc making use of in his judgments of Indiana? So he's saying they're similar because he's comparing them to kind of a typical adventurous archaeologist. So what concept is he using here to make that comparison, to judge Indiana as the same as himself? Here he is in the bar rubbing it in.
You and I are very much alike. Archaeology is our religion. Yet we have both fallen from the pure faith. Our methods are not different as much as you pretend. I am a shadowy reflection of you. It will take only a nudge to make you like me, to push you out of the light.
Now you're getting nasty.
What do you guys think? Prototype, that's right. Yeah, he's saying they're judging Indiana to be the same category, same thing as him because of how similar they are and kind of prototypical, typical adventurous archaeologists and their beliefs and all sorts of methods and that. Now we're on to lesson 17 of 21. We're getting there. So Indiana Jones goes to Tanis, the place in Egypt where the Nazis are looking for the Lost Ark. But he realizes a number of things. First of all, I guess I should say the lesson. When the puzzle pieces unite, it's pure delight. So illustrating that is that after deciphering the markings on both sides of the headpiece, Indiana suddenly realizes that the Germans have been digging in the wrong place, which gives him much satisfaction, the hope of getting the Ark now coming back. And then he goes to the map room and uses the Staff of Ra. He manages to decode the markings on the floor to figure out where to properly put the staff of the headpiece of Ra. And when the light comes through at the right time, it shows the location of where the Ark is hidden, this kind of room that illustrates the little map. And when he suddenly reveals the answer where the true location of the Ark is, Indiana Jones is overwhelmed with joy at this discovery. So the question is, what did Indiana experience when he solved these problems? What concept do we have is that this is all illustrating that sudden kind of realization, the solution, often associated with lots of joy and delight. What do we call that? And here, I won't play the whole scene. It's a great scene, but here's just a short bit of it. Yeah, insight, that's right, exactly, insight, that sudden solution to a problem, associated with these wonderful, joyful feelings usually as well. Good. Moving on, we've got lesson 18, which says, care less what others say than what the facts display. So Indiana, he goes to the Soul of Wells that the map room had showed him where the location of the Ark is. He gets there as the first to get the Ark. Just when it looks like everything's going to go well, his Ark rival discovers him in there, traps him in there, abandons him in there, takes away the rope so he can't escape, and there's snakes everywhere in there. And Belloc doesn't have any qualms about doing this to Indiana. He's done lots of terrible things to Indiana in the past, tried to kill him. But it's when Marion also gets thrown in by the Nazis into that well of souls to be abandoned and killed there that he protests, because Marion had been alive, had kept her with him, and he'd grown really fond of her, didn't think that they were, chucking her too. The Nazis remind him, though, of his commitments, his beliefs in the Nazis' mission. And instead of looking at the facts of all the horrible things the Nazis are doing, instead, Belloc doubles down on his previous commitment and belief in the Nazis. And so the question is, what is Belloc demonstrating by his denial of evidence showing that his allegiance to the Nazis is wrong? And here's that clip of him coming to that submission.
The girl was mine! She's of no use to us. Only our mission for the Führer matters. I wonder sometimes, monsieur, if you have that clearly in mind.
It was not to be, Sherry.
You bastards! I'll get you for this!
Indiana Jones? Adieu.
That's right, belief perseverance. Yeah, he's persevering his previous beliefs. He's not letting the facts change his beliefs at all, which is a very tough thing that we as humans have. We have our beliefs, and it takes a lot to be able to change them. It's not easy to change someone's beliefs. We're very tempted just to deny the facts, but of course in science, that's the whole thing, is you train yourself to listen to what the facts display, and if they go against your cherished theory, to be able to revise or even completely rechange your theory if they don't fit the facts. But it goes against our human nature. We want to stick with our cherished beliefs. Okay, we're almost there. We're on lesson 19. It says, sometimes you fall because you can't win them all. So amazingly, Indiana, it seemed like he was left in that well of souls to die with the snakes. He amazingly escapes and saves Marion with him, and somehow manages to track down where the Nazis have taken the Ark. And he decides he's going to disguise himself in a Nazi uniform to infiltrate them and get back the Ark. But it doesn't go as planned, as my little lessoning suggests there. Can't win them all. That first of all, he tries on the uniform and it doesn't fit him, so it's hard to disguise himself when he doesn't look very well kept. The other thing, though, is that a Nazi soldier finds him and starts talking to him. He doesn't understand everything the Nazi soldier is saying, and he can't answer back, and he's not able to fake a German accent. So the question I've got for this one is, what time in development would Indiana have needed to have been exposed to relevant environmental stimuli in order for him to have mastered spoken German language? But this wasn't necessary for the other skills that he's been able to show, to escape from traps and to be able to locate the Ark. All those he didn't need this special time period. But for mastering language, it's shown you do need to be exposed to this time period in development. What do we call that time period? That you need to be exposed to some kind of language in order to gain mastery of it. And here's the clip of him lacking that language skill.
Guten Tag. Müde? Warum schläfst du? Wo ist dein Hemd? Wasch dich mal, damit du nicht aussiehst wie ein Schwein bei deinem Stammgericht. Steh auf!
Critical period, that's right. And there is critical periods for other things, but definitely, for be able to understand the grammar of the language and to be able to develop a natural accent that shows with language, you really need that kind of early exposure in life. Trying to develop later on as an adult, it's much harder, if not impossible. Okay, so now we're on to lesson 20, 21. We're almost at the end here. Lesson 20 says, don't promise more than the evidence calls for. So now they've taken Indiana, Marion prisoner, and the Nazis have the Ark. And out of his belief in his own superiority above that of the Jewish Ark, a Nazi colonel tells Balak that he doesn't even think it's necessary to safely test the Ark before he gives it to Hitler. Balak, however, wants to test it, and he decides to open the Ark anyways, and thinking that he'll be able to control its powers. But he's totally wrong. You know, he had no reason to think that he could control it, and winds up killing him and all the Nazis. But luckily, Indiana doesn't fall prey to this false idea, and he knows that there's too much risk that he won't be able to control the powers of the Ark. So Indiana closes his eyes, tells Marion to do so, and so they are saved, whereas the Nazis aren't. And the question here is, what errant thinking did both the Nazi colonel and Balak, but not Indiana, make that led to these bad decisions that ultimately cost their lives? And I won't play the whole long clip of the Nazis getting melted, but here is the one scene just showing their hubris, their false. I don't want to give away the answer, but anyways, what leads to their false costs and the consequences here. Overconfidence, again, that overconfidence, it's a common mistake that we see again and again in this movie kind of thing, where people assume something they don't have the evidence for, that they have better abilities than what's actually the case kind of thing. And there's lots of real life examples of that. On the good side, overconfidence is associated with being a happier person, that you think you can do more than the actual facts suggest, but it can also get you in lots of trouble, get you into kind of financial and legal and all sorts of other kind of personal issue troubles too. And actually found that people who are depressed people tend to actually be more realistic, that they don't live happier lives by actually, basing more closely on the facts what they're capable of, but they tend to be more realistic in the appraisal of situations, what actually is possible or not. And the last lesson. So Indiana takes the Ark back to Washington, D.C., to the intelligence officers. The lesson here we've got is, don't let branding fool your understanding. So when he gives it back to the intelligence officers, Indiana's very concerned about, okay, who's going to research it? This is very powerful, dangerous kind of thing. We need to have the right people studying it. And he asks the intelligence officer, and the intelligence officer just keeps repeating the same two-word phrase, top men. He says, who's going to study it? He says, top men. And of course, this doesn't fool Indiana, doesn't calm him. He realizes, well, just because you call them top men doesn't mean they actually know what they're doing. But it does mislead the intelligence officer to thinking that they'll be able to study it properly, when in fact, the people it gives it to just stick it in a crate and put it in a giant warehouse where no one studies at all. So I'm looking for two concepts here. So in terms of language development, if this was language development, what is the officer's use of this two-word phrase most similar to? What stage of language development is it similar to? And secondly, what theory that we have this week as a concept can account for the misleading influence of that phrase on the officer's thinking? Because of that phrase, top men, he thinks that the people he gives it to will do proper studies of it. That totally misleads him, but not Indiana. So what's the name of that theory? It might be one we've already talked about earlier. So here's the clip of the intelligence officer trying to assure Indiana.
Satisfactory. Well, the -5 situation is totally unacceptable.
Well, gentlemen, I guess that just about wraps it up.
Where is the Ark?
I thought we'd settled that. The Ark is somewhere very safe.
From whom?
The Ark is a source of unspeakable power, and it has to be researched.
And it will be, I assure you, Dr. Brody, Dr. Jones. We have top men working on it right now.
Who?
Top men.
Hey, what happened? You don't look very happy.
Fools.
What stage of language development is that phrase similar to? Any guesses, group 4? Two-word stage, that's right. And then what's the theory we have as a concept this week that says that using that language is what misled their thoughts? Guesses for that? I'm not too sure. How about next row, group 5? You guys have a guess. What's that theory? Linguistic determinism again, yeah. The words that we use influence how we think. And in this case, it can mislead you. We saw the example before where having the proper words can lead to better understanding of things, but using certain phrases can also mislead you as well. Good, okay. So that's all 21 lessons. That's the whole story of Indiana Jones. Let's go through and just do a quick recap, and we do this as a class kind of thing, so just see how well you can actually remember the different concepts that are illustrated by each of these different episodes. So first of all, we start off in the jungle. Remember the Indiana's guide got scared by the scary statue and ran off. What was that guide using that made him run off, whereas Indiana didn't? He sat there and thought about stuff. The guide was led by what? What do we call it? It's kind of gut feeling, automatic reactions. Intuition. And then they continue in the jungle. They come across a poison tip arrow. One of the guides that immediately brings to mind the memory of vetoes, and based on that, he judges that vetoes are following them. What is that guide using?
Availability heuristic.
That's right, availability heuristic, using how available something is based on your memory, instead of thinking about what's the actual probability, what's the likelihood of that actually being true for when you're making decisions. Then they come to a river, and remember one of the other guides pulls out a gun, going to shoot Indiana behind his back, but Indiana hears the click of the gun and just reflexively whips the gun out of the guy's hand. So it's from years of practice, these dangerous situations, that Indiana is able to respond so quickly without thinking about it. What is he using there? Intuition, yeah, and this is kind of the positive side. Intuition can be, can mislead you, but it can also help you. And they talk about experts from years of practice develop intuitions. They can just immediately size up some kind of complex situation without having to consciously think about it. There's actually a Nobel Prize that was given to Kahneman, where he wrote up in his a best-selling book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. He talked about two different types of thinking, type 1 and type 2. Type 1, which is the intuition, is kind of fast, non-conscious kind of ways of sizing up situations to make judgments, versus type 2, which is slower and more conscious, deliberate type thinking. Next, then Indiana goes down into the temple, and the one guard, his last guide, thinks that it's safe to go to the idol, but Indiana says, no, we better test for booby traps. So what's going on here? What did he fall prey to? He thought it was safe when that was more than the evidence suggested. That's overconfidence, right? He's thinking that they can do more than the evidence really suggests. And then Indiana decides to test it, and the way he tests it, he avoids another error in problem solving, that he doesn't just look for evidence that can support the belief. He doesn't just look for things that suggest it's safe. He actually actively tests to try to prove that belief wrong. So he avoids what type of bias? Confirmation bias. Yeah, confirmation bias is when you test a theory only by you cherry look for evidence that can support it. But again, in science, you have to do the unnatural thing, is think about how you could falsify some kind of theory. What would prove it wrong? That, again, that doesn't come naturally to us as humans. You have to kind of train yourself to do that. Then he goes to the idol. Again, he doesn't want to set off the booby trap, so he has to imagine what the weight of the idol is so he can have the right amount of sand in the bag to replace it. What does he use to be able to think of what the weight of the idol is? Imaginal thought, yeah. He doesn't reason through it with language, logic. Instead, he just pictures and imagines what its weight is. Sets off the booby trap anyways. He runs out, and Belloc steals the idol from him. And then Belloc controls the people using what? What do we call the sounds to express ideas to people? Language, yeah. And then specifically, what stage of language is he illustrating by using single words commands like wish wish or the name of the god? One word stage, yeah, nicely. And that in children, that develops at 1 year of age when they say the first words. And yeah, from years 1 to 2, they do everything kind of one word commands kind of thing. When they're asking for something like a truck, they don't have different names for different types of trucks. They just say truck kind of thing. And and they're one-word statements. There's no order to it that's important. It's not to the second year stage they learn, kind of basic syntax in terms of the order of things. Cat chase dog is different from dog chase cat, kind of things like that. Anyways, okay, so and he goes back to his college. He teaches there, so he teaches this class terminology, like the term Neolithic. And remember, that illustrates the 3 different parts of language. So the sounds that the individual, letters make, or even the TH is one of these as well. What's those smallest units of sound in language? Yeah, phonemes, yeah. And then the meaningful units that they make up. So like neo, which means new, that is a what? Morpheme. And then the rules for how to spell, combine the different sounds in a language and what meanings you can draw them, how to spell it out, and how to combine words. All those kind of rules of language are called what? Grammar, yeah, grammar for that. Then he teaches about the burial site and how the traditional beliefs misled the people for where to search for the treasure. What concept was that? What do we call your prior beliefs, expectations, leading you to kind of make certain judgments that can be wrong, not thinking about other possibilities? Mental set, yeah, you're set in your ways kind of thing. Certain beliefs, past experiences, what's worked in the past makes you stick with that again and again for solutions and not to think about other possible solutions. So mental set. And then we've got the suits arrived, the intelligence officers who are interested in Indiana because he has a whole bag of talents, man of many talents. All those talents they exhibited, ability to communicate ideas, expert knowledge, problem-solving skills. All those are parts of what? What general thing do we call all those? Cognition. That's right, cognition are all those kind of mental processes, activities. They get him to help them better understand the meaning of the different words in the Nazi communique, what tennis is and what Ra is and what the Ark is and all that. And so then they learn the meaning of those words. The meaning of the words are stored in what area of the brain? Wernicke's, yeah. So I've got, help you remember to think vernacular, Wernicke's. Vernacular is your knowledge of words. So it's your little mental dictionary, your Wernicke's area. It's in your temporal lobe, bronchoscopy on the left side. And then once they understand the meaning of those words, they have a better understanding of what the Nazis are up to, which fits with one of the only concept as a theory this week, saying that understanding words helps you to better understand situations. What's that theory called again?
Linguistic determinism.
That's right, linguistic determinism. And then lastly, the intelligence officers say how they think that Ravenwood, Indy's supervisor, is a Nazi spy because he's mentioned so much in the cable, but Indiana and his colleague says, no, you're interpreting that all wrong, that's leading you to the wrong judgments about Ravenwood. So what is it the difference between them? How we don't call it interpreting, we use it what? What is that? Framing, yeah, they framed the situation in this case, how they're interpreting that Nazi cable. They framed it differently, and that influences their judgment about Ravenwood. So then Indiana flies off to Nepal. He rescues Marianne, who's being tortured by the Nazis, so they can try to get her headpiece of Staff Ra that she's holding it from her father. But she has a hard time getting words out when she's afraid. What area of your brain is not functioning that allows you to be able to speak fluently? Broca's area, yeah. If it's not functioning, then you have broken speech. So broken speech, Broca's area, if that helps you remember that area. It's in the left frontal. So Indy rescues her, they fly to Cairo, Marianne adopts the little monkey as a baby. Monkey's making all sorts of noises related to their language and all their sounds and can imitate other kind of languages that he hasn't heard before. What stage of language development is that like? You see in babies? Babbling stage, yeah. And then she gets kidnapped and he goes racing after her. A swordsman blocks the way. He doesn't have time to do long drawn out fight, so he just shoots him. What kind of problem-solving strategy is that shortcut called? Heuristic, that's right. Then he catches up to the basket in the marketplace where there's tons of other baskets, so he has to knock them over one by one systematically to try to figure out which one she's in. That approach is known as what? That more time-consuming but more accurate approach? Algorithm, yeah. More kind of formulaic approach. And then he thinks she dies in an accident. He gets all drunk and in despair. Belloc shows up and rubs it in, that he's lost his loved one. and starts making comparisons, saying that you're the same as me, that we're both, believe in the same kind of archaeology as religion, and we're both a certain type of archaeologist. So that he's using a type of archaeologist. We have a name for that when you're trying to judge what something is, what category, what concept something fits into. We use what to do that? Prototype, that's right, yeah. We're not, it's not a set definition of say like the common example is what's a bird kind of thing. To try to judge whether something new is a bird, we don't go through logically and think, okay, does it have wings, can it fly, does it have feathers, all these kind of things, does it have a beak? Instead, we just automatically kind of compare that thing to our kind of prototype, our best example of a bird, and see how closely does it match and how similar it is to be able to say whether we think it's a bird or not. And the more closely it matches that kind of example that we have in mind, the prototype, then the easier it is, the faster we're able to kind of categorize it as what type of concept that thing should be considered to be. Anyways, then he flies to Tanis. He realizes that the Nazis are searching the wrong place, and then he solves the puzzle in the map room to find out the true location, has all these wonderful, immediate kind of revelations that bring him joy. What do we call those? We don't call them revelations. What's that? Sudden solution to a problem? Insight, yeah. And then he goes to the proper location of the Lost Ark, discovers it's in the Soul of Wells, but then Belloc steals it from him and traps him in the well souls, and then the Nazis throw Marion in there too. He's mad at that, but he accepts his previous belief, his commitment to the Nazis' mission, despite all the evidence showing how it's so terrible he shouldn't be doing it. What's that called? Sticking to prior beliefs despite what the evidence suggests. Remember this?
Believe perseverance.
That's right, belief perseverance. And then Indiana escapes, tracks down where the Ark is, tries to disguise himself in a Nazi uniform, but it doesn't fit, and he can't, imitate the Nazi accent as well as he doesn't understand. Can't imitate the German accent and can't understand German very well. He missed what time period in development where you need to be exposed to German language in order to master it. That's called a what? Critical period of development, yeah. And so he gets caught. The Nazis decide it's fine for them to open up the Ark, which is totally wrong. They shouldn't have assumed that was fine kind of thing. They wound up killing them. What did they fall prey to there that Indiana didn't? Overconfidence again, yeah, that killed them. Indiana knew not to risk it, kept his eyes closed, saved him and Marion by doing that. They take the Ark back to Washington, where the intelligence officers say, don't worry, well, we've got the right people studying this, we've got top men. And so because of that term, that branding, top men, they feel assured that it'll all be taken care of, when in fact it's not at all. Indiana Jones knows that you shouldn't just be misled by that kind of term, top men. And so that two-word phrase is similar to what similar named stage of language development? Two-word stage, yeah, we're now at 2 years of age, children now can express ideas using 2 words, and the order makes a difference now. They can do at least 2 words, if not more. And again, that one theory we have this week is the concept of talking about how language can influence your thinking. In this case, it influences the wrong way for the intelligence officers. What's the name of that theory again? Linguistic determinism, yeah, that intersection of language influencing your thoughts. And can mislead your judgment. Sometimes it can help the judgment, sometimes it can mislead it, so you have to be careful about it, the power of language. And that is it. We've gone through all 21. I hope that story helps to make it more understandable and more memorable. I recommend tonight when you're waiting to fall asleep, see if you can picture the story of the different events as each event leads to the next, and try to remember what concept each of those scenes is illustrating, what the name of the concept is, and hopefully that will help you then for quizzes and exams. And that is about it.